Imagine this, a family Bible so large it required two men to lift it, its pages swollen with pressed flowers, birth records, and names written in spidery ink. In 1912, it was stolen from a locked church chest in eastern Kentucky. No thief was ever caught, but years later, townsfolk whispered that the theft wasn't about the book. It was about the names inside it, names of children who never grew up, names of marriages that never truly happened, names that never should have existed at all. This is where our descent begins, in the mountains of Appalachia, where one family, the Harrows, held sway over generations, their legacy soaked in whispers of incest, disappearance, and a covenant older than the nation itself. What we are about to uncover is not folklore, it is not superstition. It is the record of an American dynasty that thrived on silence, shadows, and a pact no historian dares to publish. The Harrow family lived in the folds of Wolfe County, Kentucky, land cut by limestone caverns and coal seams where fog lingered like a living thing. The geography itself seemed designed for concealment. Roads ended suddenly in rivers, bridges rotted before they could be crossed. Every mile was an erasure, a barrier, a silence. Locals told stories of hearing church bells deep inside the mountains, though no chapel was marked on any map. This was Harrow country. Outsiders rarely stayed, those who tried. Preachers, teachers, or even census men were either driven out or more often simply disappeared. No bodies were ever found, only the eerie sound of dogs howling at dusk as if answering something human that moved in the trees. It is in this geography of secrecy that the Harrow legend took root. A family so entangled with the land itself, you could not separate them from the soil, the fog, or the graves hidden beneath both. The Harrow name first appeared in county records in 1811 with a man known only as Josiah Harrow. His origins were unclear. Some claimed he was a deserter from Virginia's militias. Others said he had no shadow when he walked beneath the moon. He purchased no land but claimed thousands of acres by force, marrying a woman half his age whose maiden name appears in no surviving registry. Together, they bore 12 children, yet only 5 were ever recorded alive in official ledgers. Family tradition whispered that the other 7 had been swallowed by the mountain. For over a century, every Harrow child carried the same features: hair too dark to be natural, eyes that reflected firelight like animals, and a tendency toward silence that unnerved even their own kin. What bound them was more than blood. It was a contract, one neither church nor courthouse dared write down. By 1840, a Baptist congregation sat at the base of Harrow land, but the church was no refuge. Its pastors came and went with frightening speed, often resigning after a single sermon. One diary, discovered decades later, reveals why. They sit in the pews and do not blink. The children smile without moving their lips. Their hymns are not sung, but hummed, as though from deep within their chests. And behind the chapel walls, I hear a second voice, lower, not belonging to any man. Yet the Harrows attended every service. They tithed more than any other family, ensuring silence from the pulpit. Church elders buried rumors before they could take root, and so the pact between scripture and shadow deepened, unchallenged, as if even God had been bribed into keeping quiet. In 1866, after the Civil War, the county opened a small orphanage in the valley. Within months, half the children were sent to live with the Harrows. Town records boast of the family's generosity. But whispers tell another story. Not one of those children was ever seen again. Not in school, not in church, not on the roads, just gone. Years later, a traveler spoke of a feast he attended on Harrow land, where the long wooden table was set with silver plates, yet no meat was served, only bowls of broth so dark it looked black. The bowls were placed before children who sat in perfect silence, not a cough, not a scrape of spoon. When the guest inquired about their names, an older Harrow leaned close and whispered, "They have none. Names bind the living, these belong elsewhere now." Cemeteries in Wolfe County carry no Harrow graves, none. For over 100 years, not one headstone bore their name. Yet the family line continued without interruption. Births, deaths, marriages. Where did their dead go? Farmers spoke of seeing unmarked mounds deep in the woods, shaped not like graves but like long trenches. On fog, heavy mornings, hunters reported seeing children walking barefoot across the fields, their faces pale, their eyes vacant, vanishing into the soil as if the land itself devoured them. Local superstition grew that Harrows did not bury their dead because their dead never truly died. They remained, beneath roots, beneath stone, humming in the silence like an unbroken choir. Coal miners sent to dig through Harrow land in 1892 never lasted more than a week. Their letters home spoke of hearing chanting through the stone, voices rising from shafts that should have been empty. One foreman recorded that tools would vanish overnight, only to be found arranged in perfect circles come morning. When the mining company demanded production, the Harrows themselves offered to continue the work. No outsider ever stepped into those shafts again. Years later, when a collapse sealed the mine permanently, locals gathered at the mountain's edge to listen. They swore they could still hear it, the sound of pickaxes striking rock, followed by the low hum of something not human, still digging, still waiting. In 1900, census records for Wolfe County were compiled as usual. But when those books arrived in Frankfort, one family was missing. The Harrows did not appear. No households, no names, no children, no numbers, entirely erased. Clerks later swore they had written the names down, seen the ink themselves. Yet when they checked again, the lines were blank, the paper untouched, as though the family had been swallowed out of history, leaving only white silence where numbers should have been. But townsfolk knew better. They saw the Harrow wagons every market day. They saw the children watching from windows. The Harrows were there. They had simply chosen to be uncounted. In 1907, a school teacher named Mary Elkins arrived in Wolfe County. She kept a daily journal, found decades later in the attic of her abandoned home. The entries begin with optimism. The children are eager to learn, but soon darken. She writes of Harrow children staring at her with uncanny stillness, never asking questions, never laughing. When she attempted to teach them hymns, they hummed instead, deep and dissonant, their voices vibrating the wooden walls. In one chilling entry, she describes finding strange symbols carved into her desk overnight, concentric circles crossed through with something resembling an eye. She reported it to the county superintendent. Days later, Mary vanished. Her journal ends mid-sentence. They are watching even as I. The final page is soaked with what appears to be candle wax. No investigation followed. No one spoke her name aloud again. Only one child is known to have escaped Harrow custody. His name was Thomas Glenn, placed with the family in 1889 at the age of 8. Nearly 20 years later, he appeared in St. Louis, disheveled and incoherent, warning strangers of the family who eat names. When pressed, he claimed the Harrows fed their children on something he called the marrow of silence, a sustenance that was neither food nor drink, but a taking away of voice and memory. Glenn died in a sanitarium within the year, his tongue blackened, his final words recorded by a nurse, "Don't let them hum, don't let them hum in the walls." In 1919, fire consumed the Harrow homestead. Witnesses claimed the blaze burned hotter than coal, turning stone foundations to powder. Firefighters scoured the ash for remains, but none were found, no bones, no bodies, not even iron nails. The fire seemed to erase matter itself. Yet the very next Sunday, the Harrows attended church, sitting in the front pews as though nothing had happened. Their clothes bore no scorch marks, their faces held no smoke. It was as if they had walked directly out of the fire, untouched. The town did not speak of it, but the preacher's hands trembled so violently that he dropped the sacramental cup, spilling red wine across the floorboards, where it pooled, dark as blood, around the Harrows' shoes. By the 1920s, rumors spread of Harrow children seen in daylight without shadows. Travelers described them standing at the edge of roads, watching silently, their outlines strangely incomplete, as though light itself recoiled. One merchant swore he saw a Harrow girl reflected in a store window, but when he turned, the road behind him was empty. Parents forbade their children from playing near Harrow land, but no matter how far you stayed, the children found you. They appeared in barns, in attics, at the edges of dreams, When asked what they wanted, they only hummed, that low, impossible vibration that made even grown men weep without knowing why. In 1924, Dr. William Kessler, the county physician, confessed to the state medical board that he had falsified decades of records. He admitted that birth and death certificates for the Harrows were altered under pressure, with dates changed or left blank altogether. In one instance, he recorded the death of a Harrow infant, only to see the same child, unchanged in age, sitting before him 3 years later. Kessler described them as unaging, undying, existing outside the scale of human years. Shortly after his confession, Kessler was found hanged in his barn. The coroner ruled it suicide, but his widow insisted his hands were broken, as though he had tried desperately to resist the rope. By 1930, every official attempt to catalog the Harrows failed. Deeds, contracts, baptismal ledgers, all dissolved into blanks, in courthouse vaults, pages turned brittle and white, ink erased as though by acid. One clerk swore he saw the names fade before his eyes, letters dissolving like smoke. Yet oral memory remained. Elders could recite generations of Harrows, though nothing survived on paper. It was as though the family existed only in the mouths of those cursed to remember them, and each time someone died, another piece of the family's history vanished with them. A rare public account came from a widow named Abigail Carter, who lived near Harrow land until 1933. She testified in a deposition concerning a property dispute that she often heard chanting at midnight, long, unbroken drones that made her bones ache. She swore she saw the Harrow matriarch, an impossibly old woman, standing barefoot in snow, eyes open, never blinking. Abigail described children gathering around her, not touching, not speaking, but vibrating as though the sound passed through their bodies. The deposition ends with Abigail screaming in court, clawing at her ears, repeating one phrase until she fainted. "The mountain is hollow, the mountain is hollow." During the influenza epidemic of 1918–1920, not one Harrow fell ill. Doctors admitted dozens of county residents to makeshift wards, but no Harrows. A nurse, curious, secretly drew blood from a Harrow child brought in with a broken arm. The vial reportedly blackened overnight, thickening until it was no longer liquid. The nurse was dismissed. Within a week, she vanished. Witnesses last saw her walking into the woods toward Harrow land, her face blank, her movements stiff, as if pulled by unseen strings. In 1935, federal agents arrived to investigate rumors of tax fraud and land disputes tied to the Harrows. They never returned. Government records acknowledge their arrival in Wolfe County, but their exit is unrecorded. Locals later claimed they saw black cars abandoned in the woods, doors wide open, seats soaked with something darker than oil. Washington quietly closed the case. The Harrows remained untouchable. In 1941, the Baptist church bell, silent for decades, rang in the dead of night. No hand pulled the rope. Every family in the valley woke, rushing outside, hearing the toll echo across the ridges. But when they looked toward the church, they saw the Harrows standing in the yard, all 20, 7 of them perfectly still. With each toll, another Harrow face turned upward toward the bell. Witnesses fled, some abandoning their homes entirely. By morning, the bell was cracked down its middle. The Harrows never returned to the chapel again. The last official sighting of the Harrows came in 1947, when a traveling photographer captured an image of a Wolfe County fair. Behind the carnival rides and booths, a group of children can be seen standing in perfect alignment, staring directly into the lens. Their faces are expressionless, their eyes reflecting light like mirrors. Locals identified them as Harrows. Weeks later, the photographer died in a hotel fire in Lexington. His negatives were destroyed. Only one print survived, warped and singed, passed down quietly among collectors who whisper that if you stare long enough, the children begin to move. By 1950, the Harrow name was gone. No trace in phone books, no addresses, no mail routes, no living descendants to claim the land. Their homestead collapsed into vines. The woods swallowed the foundations whole. Outsiders assumed they had moved away, scattered, forgotten. But Wolfe County residents tell a different story. They say the Harrows are still there, humming beneath the mountain, watching from the fog, uncounted and unburied. And when a stranger stays too long, when someone asks the wrong questions, they vanish. Just another silence swallowed by the soil. So when you drive through the Appalachian backroads and the mist gathers thicker than it should, remember this: not every American family was meant to be remembered. Some were meant to be erased, and some, like the Harrows, erase you first.